But what about, for example, like when you consume carbohydrates with fat, which is what you recommend, like a moderate to high amount of fat and a high amount of carbohydrates, there is going to be cross inhibition, and that's going to increase the glycation.
He's talking about the Randall cycle.
Load in the cells from glucose, and then also on top of the Randall cycle, you're gonna have like heaps of carbs coming in, which is going to activate the polyol pathway and cause systemic fructose production within cells, and that's going to be 10 times glycating than the glucose because it's systemic.
Yeah, it's just back to mechanistic speculation. It's like, what's interesting is when you are looking at a lot of carnivore lab work. Like I looked through about.
Wait, so you're an
probably,
outcome cell now?
I'm a what?
An outcome cell?
Yeah, I am. Like, I am. Like the mechanistic speculation. That's just infinite. Because then it's like, okay, then you can say that. Then I can say, and then MGO is up by 2.5 times on keto diets or low carb diets. Like,
Dude, finally he's starting to get it.
like consistently.
Are you an
And that's-
epidemiology stan?
No, never. But
What outcome trials do we have?
I still think he was wrong on that. I think discrediting epidemiology altogether, the entirety of it, I think that's not correct. But anyway, he is still progressing in the right direction.
And I mean, like it's garbage.
yeah, so
If we had some good data,
yeah, that's
but of course
why,
everything's
like, when we're
necessarily
forming-
mechanistic speculation.
So when we're forming perspectives, that's something a lot of the authoritative carnivores do too, is like they demand evidence that doesn't exist instead of looking at what we have from an open mind. Like,
They say all the time, oh, you cannot prove my diet is wrong because there are no studies on people that only eat raw meat. They demand evidence that doesn't exist all the time. It's kind of like what religious people do. Oh, you have a study proving God doesn't exist. Like, that doesn't mean that you're correct just because we don't have a study exactly on your diet.
Bart K was in this conversation, he'd say, show me a trial of identical twins from birth that show high cortisol is
Right.
bad, or something retarded like that. It's like, yeah, no shit, we don't have that. But if we want to form a perspective about what is likely optimal, most likely, I would say these are things to look at, most definitely. So yeah, like you can have the mechanistic speculation of the polyol pathway and then how endogenous fructose is 10 times more glycating. Again, that's just in vivo. We then need to look at, vitro. Then we need to look at, the total over amount of glycation. How long is that actually exposed in the cell? It's something you can never even get to the bottom of, which is why it's called mechanistic speculation. So
Yeah.
Dude, hell yeah, finally. This is why you cannot use mechanisms to predict outcomes. It's because, let's say you eat an apple. What people that do mechanistic speculation will do is they will say, oh, it has cyanide, which is toxic, and it has deuterium, and so it's going to ruin your health. They're hyper-focusing on these mechanisms. But no one has ever died from cyanide poisoning from an apple, ever in human history. So when you eat an apple, there's, let's say, hundreds or thousands of mechanisms at play all at the same time. And you don't know which one is more powerful than the other. So you cannot predict outcomes by mechanisms. Because when you look at mechanisms, you're looking at a very small piece of the puzzle. That's why we track outcomes. And what the outcomes say is apples are healthy. People that eat more apples compared to less, all else equal, they're healthier. They have better biomarkers. They live longer. They have lower mortality rates. And that's what matters. And this is something he criticized me on back then, and now he agrees with, which is fine. I like when people change their minds. Goatis is wrong all the fucking time, and he never admits he's wrong because, I don't know, like his ego is probably super high. But I like the fact that Physic can change his mind, and this is exactly the point of the video I made. Like, if you had to reduce my video to one phrase, it's basically that. Outcomes are better than mechanistic speculation, which is now what he is defending. And I hope he is consistent with this, and I hope he has an open mind and can change his views based on what the evidence says. But this is a massive step in the right direction. I applaud anyone that can change their mind. A lot of these people in the carnivore cult, they never admit they're wrong. Goatis has never admitted he was wrong ever, even though he is wrong all the time. And yeah, this is something that Face IQ has that the other people don't. But basically, This is the main philosophy around my views on diet, which is we have to look at outcomes, especially hard outcomes, because you can talk about mechanistic speculation for hours or days, and it doesn't matter because you will never capture the full picture. You can talk about the Randall cycle, you can talk about deuterium, you can talk about glycation, all these mechanisms, but they're still a very small piece of the puzzle, and it's impossible to predict outcomes just by mechanisms. So what he is doing now is he is putting more importance in outcomes, in what happens in vivo instead of in vitro. So for example, not having health problems, having better blood work, etc. And this is exactly the way I see it, and it's exactly how people should see it. So this is a massive step in the right direction. The hate he is receiving recently makes sense because he was super convinced of his black and white views that he had previously. But I think people should congratulate him on the fact that he can change his mind and all these other people can't. So FaceIQ finally escaped the carnivore cult while these other people are still promoting it, and they're just hyper-focusing on mechanisms. The mechanisms can make sense intuitively, but then if you have a shit blood work and you have health problems, then it is not a good diet, which was the conclusion he reached, and he is 100% correct on that. So again, I respect it for changing his mind, and pretty based from FaceIQ, in my opinion. After watching this clip, I wanted to react to it because it's basically what I was trying to say and what Hair Cafe was trying to say, which is all of this about Randall cycle, deuterium, glycation is just a small piece of the puzzle, and we cannot predict outcomes just by these isolated mechanisms.